There we go. We are back another week, and myself and Bill Bean are back here for another Warrior Mode on the channel. Again, I can't believe a week has passed since the last time we hooked up, but I am telling you, time is definitely moving faster, and we've got so much to get into tonight. But before we go anywhere, let me bring on to the show my good friend, the spiritual warrior, Bill Bean. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Brother Kev. How are you doing? How you feeling?
Well, I tell you what, Bill, I am looking rather sun-kissed. I have been catching up on some vitamin D intake. I've been
Very good.
reading a number of books. I've been training myself how to do graphics for the channel. I tell you, it's non-stop here, Bill, but I am so looking forward to the main topic that we have chosen for today. Last week, the fall show, that was absolutely amazing, and I really can't wait to get into something similar this week. And when we pick one of these topics, Bill, we enjoy it, but I find that the audience, they thoroughly enjoy it as well. So yeah, Laurel Canyon tonight, but we've got lots more before we get there.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's amazing, Kev. The tremendous response that we got from the fall episode last week is amazing. How many people enjoyed that, and it really stimulated some thought with them as well. And I'm thoroughly convinced that the Laurel Canyon will do the same thing. So this talking point tonight is going to do the same for people. And the reason that we're doing these things is to show a clear and distinct pattern that all these things meant something, and not only did they mean something that was momentous to and for the American people, and really some of these events have helped to shape where we are today as a society. So it's all about connecting the dots, and that's exactly what we're doing by choosing these topics. And I think, when it's all said and done, people will realize, hey, they're onto something here, and all of this really did play a role in shaping and doing a social engineering type of thing as well, to where shaping society to where it is right now because of those things that were implemented then.
Yeah, and that's why it is important to look back, because these are major periods in recent history that have really shaped where we are today. And forget the swinging 60s and the flower power and Woodstock and all that summer of love, because after tonight's show, you're going to be, I hope, at least more interested in looking into whether or not they would be better described as the Psy-Op 60s. Because me and Bill, we won't tell you what to think. We never do dare do that. And I think even before we get into any of this tonight, and Bill's going to touch on some of the recent events going on in the US as well. But I hear many shows out there that cover the subject of Laurel Canyon, and most of them do, but some of them don't, give credit to one man that really, without his work, I don't think we would know maybe quite as much, or maybe the dots wouldn't have been connected quite as quickly. And I'm obviously talking about the late Dave McGowan. Now, he was the man that wrote the book The Weird Scenes. Scenes of Laurel Canyon, that was the exact title of it, Bill, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think any show that you listen to and you hear people referring back to Laurel Canyon, there's a good chance that what they've seen, what they've researched, probably came from Dave McGowan, wouldn't you say, Bill? So I think we just want to pay credit to him, and in his memory, I hope we can do the information justice when we get there tonight.
Yeah, God bless him. You're exactly right, Kevin. Once again, we're in sync because I wanted to give him credit as well. So he really dug into this and did a tremendous amount of research, and in my opinion, was an expert on connecting the dots. I absolutely believe what he offered in his book as truth. He had no reason, no agenda for it to be otherwise. He presented it as it was, or as he thought that it was. And I can really agree with a lot, if not most, of what he wrote in the book, It's one of my favorite books. I've read it 3 times. I just completed it again for the 3rd time. And I've read many, many books, and very seldom do I go back and read a book 2 or 3 times. But I did with McGowan's book, and hats off to him. He's no longer with us, but I still salute him for what he did and how he put this together. And God bless him and his family.
Absolutely. Now, every week we start the show, we have a quick prayer, and I think it's even more prescient this week that we start with some kind of blessing, some kind of healing, perhaps, to, in particular, come over the US, because we're going to be starting there in a moment. Bill will be talking about the protests and everything else.
Yeah.
But I seen
Riots.
somebody, AJ, in the chat room, they kind of, they're in sync with what I was thinking. Because I think maybe we should take time out just to say a prayer about all of that before we even get going today.
Yeah. And Father, I ask that you please bring peace. It's amazing how quickly everybody has forgotten about the COVID-19 coronavirus thing, and how they've now moved on to destruction in another form with these, I don't even call them protests, they're riots, and there's destruction taking place. Father, I ask that you bless and heal America from these things. And also, I ask that you bring peace and comfort to the family of George Floyd, and to all that are involved in this, even the family of the police officer that is accused of murder of George Floyd. I ask that you bring peace in the entire matter, and I ask that you bring clarity and understanding as well to the people that are out there protesting and rioting. I ask that you bring an understanding over them, that somehow, some way, Father, you will grip them in their minds, in their hearts, and in their spirits. Convict them in their spirits, Father, and show them the error of their ways. And I know this is not going to be easy, but all things are possible with you. So I fully trust in you that you will hear my prayer and bring this healing and peace over America. And Father, as I pray every week on this show, and as I pray privately to you as well, I pray that you absolutely kill this virus, bioweapon, whatever it is, and take it from the face of the earth. And I pray that you bless and heal everyone that is afflicted and affected and suffering from this. And I ask that you have mercy on us, Father. And I pray that the people will turn back to you before it's too late. And just like you did for the people in Nineveh, I ask that you do for us. I pray that our world leaders, and certainly the leader of this country, the president, will turn to you for all guidance, and will trust in you and be authentic in his relationship with you. And I pray that you'll bless us as a people and bring peace and healing and restoration upon the United States and the entire world as well. Father, we give you the praise and the thanks and the glory forevermore, in Jesus' name.
Very well said, Bill. So let's start there. The horrendous incident involving George Floyd. There's absolutely no excuses, and colour shouldn't be involved in this, because what we seen there was a man being murdered in broad daylight, and colour in this case is what the media are latching onto. It's what the powers that shouldn't be are latching onto, and they want to make it all about this. But Bill, what I seen, it was disgusting, shocking. It cannot be defended in any way, shape or form. But from what I believe, the cop's been arrested. You'll be able to update me on that. He's been charged.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as lousy as it may seem at times, we can only hope that justice will be done there. There's a rule of law. And the last time I checked, it wasn't the rule by mob. And some of the scenes that I'm seeing, Bill,
terrible, Kev.
It's kind of taken away from George Floyd as well. Because I'm sure George Floyd, God rest his soul, if he could see some of the things that are going on right now in his name, I'm pretty sure he'd be the first one to want to put a stop to some of this.
Well, that's just the thing, Kev. This isn't in his name and has nothing to do with him anymore. I feel that another George might be behind this, and as in Soros and others like him, that are paying agitators to come into every city to start these things. And so again, I think this is another agenda. And look, not to take away from the atrocity that happened to George Floyd. And let me tell you, I was, as you know, in the bar business for 22 plus years, and I worked side by side with many police officers over the years, and many I would call my friends, and I support law enforcement 100%. And I have been in situations with law enforcement to where I was a participant in assisting them to literally take people down and get them under control and get them cuffed and detained, and never once. And I've been in many life-threatening situations, including disarming a gunman that was ready to fire again. And I had that, after I disarmed him, I had him down. I had to hold him down for like 10 minutes until the police got there. And never did I think to put my knee in his neck or anything like that. Now, I made it clear to him that if he tried to fight with me, then I would have to do something to subdue him that he would not like. But never did I ever think to cause bodily harm or murder to the individual. Another incident where a man tried to stab me, and I disarmed him and had him, and I could have I would have been justified in defending myself to where I could have said, hey, this man was a threat to my life, and tried to, which he really did. I mean, he tried to slash my face and stab me in the leg as well. And, you know, I would have been justified in defending myself, even if that came to, you know, having to take the man's life. And I praise God, I never had a thought like that. I didn't want him to hurt me, but I also I showed mercy to where I wasn't going to try and kill him or anything like that. So the point I'm trying to make is that in all walks of life, there are bad apples, and that goes for law enforcement as well. Now, the majority of law enforcement officers around the United States, and I would venture to say around the world, a high percentage of those officers are very good and decent men and women who want to uphold the law, and they want to do the very best that they can do in each and every day. However, there are these small percentages of police officers that enjoy inflicting punishment and bodily harm. And so,
by all accounts, the one in question, the main offender,
yes.
He fits that kind of bill that you're talking about there.
No question, Kev, because when you think about this, and again, I'm coming from a standpoint of law enforcement and being a participant with law enforcement and being in many battles to where I had to restrain people. And my objective always was to ensure the safety of everyone, including my own safety, but I never had malice towards anyone to try and cause permanent injury or death. In a situation like this, and I watched the video, here's what I saw, and this is what I read, that this individual, George Floyd, and another male who was in the passenger seat and a female that was in the passenger side rear seat, were approached by law enforcement because the male passenger tried to pass off a counterfeit $20 bill in the store that their vehicle was parked in front of. And then the story goes on to say that George Floyd himself took the counterfeit bill and went back in. Now, this is before the police arrived. he went back into the store and tried, and actually did get cigarettes with it, and they figured out that the bill was counterfeit. And the clerk comes out of the store, and George Floyd's vehicle is still parked in front of the store. And he comes out and says, look, you've given me a phony $20 bill here. I want the cigarettes back. And Mr. Floyd would not comply, would not give the cigarettes back. So then the police are called, law enforcement arrives. From what I saw in the video, they approach the vehicle, they take the passengers out first, and then they get Mr. Floyd out of the vehicle. He seems to be compliant from what I see on the video. They do put him in cuffs. At one point, they have him sitting against the wall. Seems to be compliant the whole way. And then they get him up, and they're walking him down the street. Now, this part I can't figure out. I guess the first responding police vehicle was parked a little ways down the block. So they get him up, and now they're walking across, and this is in Minneapolis, City Street, and they're walking him across the street to go down to the block, I guess, to the police vehicle, and that's where the video cuts off. So I don't know what happened in between that. Now, it was said that Mr. Floyd began to resist arrest when they put him in the vehicle, and so they had a skirmish with him. Be that as it may, the video picks up, or another video that I saw that everyone has seen, is that Mr. Floyd is face down on the ground in cuffs. So at this point, he's no threat because he is already detained. He's in cuffs. So what can he do? Nothing. He's face down on the ground. So he's no threat to anyone. And at that point, there are 4 officers there, and the officer in question is putting his knee on this man's neck. Now, again, in looking at the video, it looked to me like his knee was pressing on the carotid artery of Mr. Floyd, which is cutting off blood flow. Kev, I don't know how to say this.
Now, Bill, this is the thing that really shocks me about this part.
Yeah.
Because comes to be that when you look at the training manuals for the Minnesota police, that this actual move, this like leaning on the carotid artery, it's something that they actually teach their officers.
Well, it works, and I'll tell you this, and this was what I was about to say. I take no pride in telling you this, but I've been in situations myself to where if you grab someone by the carotid artery, and I mean you grab really hard for a few seconds, they're going to pass out because now you're choking off the blood flow that's going in, and they're going out. There's nothing they can do to stop that. And so within seconds, you can render a person unconscious, and you got to get them awake very quickly because it could cause brain damage from lack of blood going into the brain. So I know all about these things, believe me. So for that officer to have been on that man's neck with his knee for nearly 9 minutes, there's no defending that. There's no excuse for that. Again, you're talking about a man that was in cuffs, that is face down on the ground. And even at that point, he was really in a panicked state, and they have said he was under the influence of something, whether he was or whether he wasn't. I would think anyone would be in a panicked and agitated state when you have someone that is putting their knee down on your neck, certainly for almost 9 minutes. And, I can't believe that the man didn't pass out long before, 8 minutes and 46 seconds or whatever it was. But then I read that one of the 4 officers there actually said to the officer that the perpetrating officer, let's roll him on his side, because I think at that point, as this is going on, I think this other officer is now showing concern that, hey, this is bad and something really bad can happen here if he continues to kneel on this man's neck like this. He told the other officer that said, hey, let's roll him on his side. He said, no, he's going to stay right here. And so this individual, again, based on what I have read and based on what I saw, showed absolute malice and intent to do serious bodily harm. And he had to know by the training that you mentioned there that they go through, that if he continued in this manner, something really bad was going to happen, which could result in this man's death, which did.
And, I think there's probably a lot more going on here, in that we found out that the two individuals in question, the police officer and George Floyd, a long history of working together at the same nightclub. Now,
Yeah.
Bill, I imagine when you were working at the nightclub, you weren't into the nefarious, shady side of things that I'm sure you will appreciate, though, having worked there, as I have myself, that there is a very kind of dark underbelly in that world where
Absolutely.
the people that are meant to be stopping drugs getting into the clubs, yeah, they do, but then they resell them up the stairs and there's big kind of rackets going on.
Yeah.
I've seen it myself, when I worked in security. It is what it is. And the reason I bring that up is, maybe there's even something going on that we know nothing about to explain.
I thought the same thing, Kev. Yeah, I thought the same thing because I'm going to tell you this again. I've worked at many nightclubs over the years of my career in that business, and thank God I'm out of it now. But I could write a book just on those experiences alone.
It's a crazy world, right?
Yeah, and at no time in any place that I ever worked did I not know all of the staff. Now, on most occasions, I was the manager of these security teams, so I knew everybody because I was hiring them. But I can't imagine, even if you were just someone that went there and took a job as a part-time job or whatever, that you wouldn't know whom you're working with or who is on the staff or the team. I find that hard to believe. So that leads me right back to what you said, that perhaps there was something very personal here going on. And this police officer had an opportunity to really use his authority, and it just, to me, again, Kev, it just seemed like malice. There was quite a bit of malice there in what was done.
And we've had this, what I call an ignition point. We've had this event that we've had the media jump in on. And bear in mind, like Scott Lopez rightly pointed out when he was on Freaky Friday, they don't highlight every single event when it comes to police brutality. They're very, very choosy. And it's when the colours fit. It's not me that's been racist. If you've got a problem with what I'm saying, it's the mainstream media.
Yeah.
Because they've used this now. And like Bill rightly said, there's a lot going on in the world right now, and there's a heck of a lot going on in America on multiple levels and multiple fronts. And it's only going to get worse the more or closer we get to election time. And we've had the whole COVID, and that's still playing out. And over 100,000 people in America alone have lost their lives with it being attributed to COVID. But
the
now,
numbers are still going up in Maryland, Kev.
And now we've got this next wave. And Bill, it looks to me as if they're really, really going for it with this whole, it's not protests, it's riots. And you're right, a lot of Soros money in there. And I'll give you my experience on things. I used to go to protests, and I was waking up around the time that the Occupy movement came along. And I remember it started in Glasgow here as well. We were one of the first cities to really kind of go for it. George Square, people were going to go there. We were all full of good intentions to go there with our tents and stay there until we changed the world. So I went up there the first couple of nights, and it was really cool, Bill, speaking to people that were like me. We didn't exactly know how to change the world, but we all agreed that we needed change. There was something wrong. But then something changed. Something got really weird in the Glasgow camp. And the atmosphere, it changed. A lot more people started turning up, and I don't know, it got a lot more politicized, like quite vehement, people with really strong kind of points of view. And the atmosphere, it wasn't the kind of place I wanted to be anymore. It had been somewhere I would take the wee man up to, Kevin, when he was small, really small child, Anne would come up. And then overnight, it just changed. Now, long story short, they eventually closed down Occupy Glasgow by having somebody cry rape at a camp that they made in Glasgow at the exact same time as they pulled the same stunt at Occupy London. And it was only later on, with hindsight and the research that all came out, that, yeah, you better believe Occupy Glasgow changed. Occupy everything changed. Because any time something comes along and it has got the potential to maybe bring about change, maybe start to make people, ask the hard questions of government and things, Well, you get these groups, and in particular one man, George Soros, and his money comes along. And if
Yeah.
they don't directly start movements, you can bet they infiltrate them. Now, this one here looks like it's been started from the ground up. They've just been waiting for one event to really kick it off. And now all those agents are being really flooded into these areas. And I
I
worry,
agree,
Bill.
Kev.
Yeah, I worry, Bill, because you're going to speak to this in a moment. Because everything's got a spiritual element to it.
Yes.
And chaos is something that's synonymous not only with them getting their new world order, but the end times. And Bill, how does this play
Man.
in with all of that?
Once again, you're it's amazing how you can do that, because that's where I was going to go next. Is my strong opinion and belief is that we are here. We are in the end times, and all you have to do is open up the book of Revelation, and you'll read about these things in there, and other things as well. We are here. These events are unfolding, and it is going according to plan for the devil. However, there's always one gross miscalculation on his part and his cronies, is that at any point in time when Yahweh, our glorious God of the universe, decides to step in and say enough is enough, they don't have any, there's nothing they can do. They can try. And I think a part of their efforts have been through the CERN device to go back in time and change some things to where they think perhaps it would delay him from, saying enough is enough. But try as they may, when God is ready to move, he is going to move, and he's going to send his son, the Christos, the Christ, the anointed one, the one that he saves through, back into this world, Yahshua, Jesus the Christ, and he's going to come back in, and when he comes back this time, he's coming with a sword. And so there's not going to be any peace and love when he arrives on the scene this time. There's going to be destruction, and I really believe that we're on the threshold of it. And I pray that God would destroy the plans of the devil and give us a reprieve like he did in Nineveh and in other places throughout history. He certainly can do that, Kev, because he can choose to do whatever he wants to do. And if he decides that he'll give us another chance and cool his anger, well, then it could happen. But based on what I'm seeing unfold before my very eyes, it's highly unlikely, because these people are so far gone. They're brainwashed, especially the young people. They're absolutely and completely brainwashed, and there's nothing that I can say or you could say or anybody else to give them pause to even consider God, number one, and secondly, to consider anything outside of themselves, because this is what the devil does. He's very clever. He doesn't care if you believe in him or not. He wants you to believe in you. He wants you to be puffed up and arrogant. Now, there's a difference between believing in yourself and having confidence. And for me, I believe in myself, but it's through the power of God. And I thank God and praise God for blessing me and for working through me to help others. So I do have belief in myself, but not in an arrogant way, and you know that. I'm talking about the person that walks around thinking that they're the center of the universe, it's their world, and everybody else is a player in it. This is what the devil loves, and he loves working through people like this, and this is the mindset and the brainwash that so many millions of people are under currently.
Very, very well said. And Bill, I look at it from 30,000 feet, and we had a real kind of rising of consciousness in the US and around the world, really, when it was coming to the whole COVID thing. And some uncomfortable questions were started to be asked of people like Fauci, Dr. Strangelove, as I
Yeah.
call him. And people were starting to get angst about being locked down, the sense behind it. And look how this has now come along. You know, look how this has come along. It's taken everyone's attention away from that. And I just
Yeah.
ask the people out there, not the audience. I know you're a whole lot more clever and streetwise, but look how easily distracted the masses get. And all of that boiling anger, all of that raising of awareness as to, maybe something been wrong with the whole COVID thing, people starting to ask questions now that they've been misdirected. And all of that attention is now going to be poured in to these riots.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this ends with these riots, Bill. You mentioned to me the National Guard coming out.
Yeah.
And I can play both sides of that, and I'll tell you why, because absolutely something needs to be done. And this should be the test of whether Donald Trump's one of them or one of us, right? I don't know if that will play out. But at the same time, you start locking down cities, you start playing the mold that the Democrat Party have been trying to paint you in the first place as this big dictator. You see, it can go both ways. The police state wins and the cabal wins. And you know who loses both times? The American people.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we fix this one, man.
Well, unfortunately, my take on it is that you can't be complacent, because we see what complacency does. And this is why destruction is taking place in cities all across America right now. And right now, the law enforcement agencies are being told to stand down and allow these people to do whatever. I saw another disturbing video, Kev, right before we came on air. This was an older lady. I would say, I don't know, she was probably may have been in her early 70s, and her husband are coming out of this. It looked like they had a small business there, and the husband is pleading with these people not to harm them and not to hurt their business. And they did it anyway. They didn't listen to that man's pleas and beat that woman viciously and destroyed the business. Now, for me, Kev, I love everybody. There's nothing I wouldn't do for anybody. However, there's another side of me as well. And when these types of situations take place, I cannot stand to see anybody victimized. So I would take drastic measures. If I were the president or the guy in charge, I would deploy National Guard and SWAT teams to every major city in America, and I would clean them out. And even if that meant the use of deadly force, I'm sorry to say, I would clean them out and clean those cities up. And then you send a message, because now the only way that you could ever get any semblance of control and law and order again, and a moral fabric to these communities and cities, would be to take this strong and aggressive approach to say, we're not tolerating this anymore. Furthermore, if you are caught doing this, there are going to be severe consequences, and it could even result in your death. And I'm sorry to say that, because I don't want to see anybody die. I don't want to see anybody hurt either. But if people are going to act this way, they're going to have to face a severe consequence. And this would go for the murderers and for the rapists and the pedophiles and all these types as well. There is a lack of consequence for these people. America is the most incarcerated country in the world ×4. It doesn't work. So now, if I were the guy in control, I'd empty out the prisons. I'd take the most extreme measures and then send a message that if you're going to do these things, if you do that, you're going to be faced with this. And what you're going to be faced with is going to be worse than the wicked and heinous act that you perpetrated upon whatever individual it was and whatever victim. So that's, for me, Kev, that would be the only way that any type of change in a positive way could occur.
Yeah, and then we're going to have to see how this plays out, because I don't know how it is today, Bill. I was watching a protest earlier on, a very peaceful one, may I say, a very orchestrated one as well. All very nice pre-made signs and very glossy finish and well paid for. Who knows where these people were bussed in from? I'm highly suspicious of the protest I seen today. You know, they were all... it was really weird,
there were loads
Bill.
of bricks, Kev. There were loads of bricks that were delivered to Baltimore. Where's the other? Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and I think Dallas.
Now, I sometimes joke with Scotty and Popeye and the guys that anytime you have any of these protests, the first question I ask the guys is, where's the burning car? Because you always have the burning car that the media focus on.
Of course.
It always makes for good TV. You've got the news camera around the burning car. And the The agent provocateurs, well, we've seen them a number of times, and like you're saying, pre-staged bricks just on pallets in the middle of streets. Come on, folks.
Imagine that, right?
Don't be this stupid. Don't fall at the final hurdle, because I think what we're also witnessing here is the kind of final desperate throes, the death throes. At the same time as they're going for broke, Bill, it could be their worst move. They might just go too far. And
I totally agree. And that's what it looks like it could do. There could be a tipping point to go too far. Now, they are implementing curfews in most of the cities. Some of the cities have 8 o'clock curfews as of tonight, 8 p.m. tonight. And then other cities even have a 4 p.m. curfew. So I think Detroit is one of those cities that 4 p.m., that's it. They want people off the streets.
Just a couple of weeks ago, there's some kind of dark irony in this somewhere, but the Americans, more so than most countries around the world, were getting really vocal about getting out of lockdown and getting back to business, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Not criticising that. And here we are now. I tell you, if you didn't like the lockdown, you ain't gonna like martial law, because that's what the National Guard bring with them, right?
That's exactly right. And do I want to see it? No. But again, in order to address this now, which is so far gone, Kev, I feel it's too far gone, but God can make the impossible possible. He's done it for me so many times in my life that I've lost count. So I know that he can do this. Is our president willing to trust and rely on God to help him through this? I don't know. I can't confidently speak that. I don't know. Are any of the other leaders, the governors and the senators and the congressmen, are they going to take this to God and ask for help? I doubt it. Are they all going to come together and formulate a plan of action? I doubt that too, because there is so much division on so many fronts in so many ways. None of these people are willing to work together unless they are on the liberal side, that they're working together for these causes. And you see some of these leaders, oh my goodness, some of these mayors and governors, some of the things that they're saying in favor of the perpetrators, in these riots. You have Hollywood responding already, that they have, they're now funding legal defenses for some of these rioters and all. You can't make it up.
And that's how you know this is controlled. And that's really important, because when it comes to what seems like organic events that just instantaneously explode out of, in this case, the George Floyd shooting, what you do come to find out once you're a bit better read, you've done the research, that nothing happens without strings being pulled. And social engineering, we're always been socially engineered, aren't we, Bill? And it's quite funny, we're talking about this here. We're talking about these, they're trying to stoke race riots. And, we're going to be talking about, in the main body of the show, another socially engineered movement, the summer of love, all the hippies and all that things. Nothing's organic, folks. When it is, it just gets hijacked anyway.
And I hate to, say, I don't want people to have the wrong impression of us saying, oh, all they talk about is this down stuff and everything's a conspiracy and all that. Well, look, we're just pointing out the truth. And no, not everything is a conspiracy. However, a lot more things are, if you want to call it conspiracy, based more than you think and than you know, because this is called social engineering. And a lot of these people in the high places see us, the regular people, as nothing more than cattle. So you have to figure out ways to be a rancher, in a sense, to manipulate the herds of cattle. And that's what this is all about.
And, not everything's a conspiracy. Absolutely. And that's what I was telling our friend Algorithm when he phoned the show the other night. I says, you have to come that close to the bottom of the rabbit hole and just make sure you don't splatter on the bottom. And then you end up coming back up a bit, Bill, and you find that, there's still some really big conspiracies, but not everything is. And sometimes you get distracted from the forest by being too concentrated on the trees. And the New World Order, some people call that a conspiracy, right? And Bill, a
Yeah.
couple of weeks ago, sent me something, and then myself and Charlie Robinson covered it on the show just on Monday. And people are still determined to call the New World Order a conspiracy. Yet, on the UN, on an official UN website, may I add, let's take our planet back. And it says the United Nations New World Order Project is a global high-level initiative founded in 2008 to advance a new economic paradigm, a new political order, and more broadly, a new world order for humankind, which achieves the UN's global goals for sustainable development by 2030 and the happiness, the well-being and the freedom of all life on Earth by 2050. And by all life, they mean synthetic, alien, created in the lab life as well. But there it is, Bill. You know, some dared.
It's right in our face.
I
So
know.
for anyone that would say, oh, this is rubbish, you know, you guys are crazy. Okay, we're crazy. Do your research. They're putting it in plain sight.
And this really is. I mean, this by definition is the apocalypse, the revealing. You know, when you see the UN unveiling websites talking about their New World Order project, I don't think it can get any more revealing than that, Bill. You know, what more do we have to
these other
do?
players too, Kev, that are revealing, you know, their chips and their vaccines and all this kind of stuff and their plans to vaccinate people and to chip them. And I've had some people say, well, what's the difference? You know, we went through the Spanish flu and swine flu and all these terrible SARS and all these different things that were, yeah, and they were terrible. They were awful. And a lot of people died as a result of them. And so some have said, well, what's different now? What makes this any different than those things? And what makes it different is the technology that is available now that was not available then. We are in a place of technological advancement that it is that time by the devil's plan to literally merge man and machine. So this transhumanism aspect is here. It is not coming. It is here. Everything is being put into place for this to take place. So there's your difference between those other catastrophes. And make no mistake, you know, lots of people died, and I'm sorry for that. But that's what makes this different technology.
And I have to agree with Bill on that. Sometimes me and Bill, we kind of differ. Sometimes it's semantics, really, you know, but when it comes to this, I really do think that this fits the bill. And I'm going to back it up with my opinion on why I think it fits the bill. Because at no other time have we been offered or have we seen the production of a technology that once we take it, it will literally rewrite who we are. And that's not me just being hyperbolic. This messenger RNA, one of them as Bill calls it, you know what I'm talking about, one of those V things. You know, it literally goes in, and we've talked about CRISPR many times on the show before, and there's even people out there who will make the argument that CRISPR itself is mark of the beast technology. Why? Because it has the ability to go in and copy and paste and snip out bits of your DNA.
This is unbelievable, Kev.
This mRNA V that they're talking about right now, in my opinion, what Kev Baker says right now, I will stand by it. That is the mark of the beast for me. Because when you start taking something that's going to rewrite the code that made you, you. When you started off as just that little cell, everything was encoded into your DNA. And everything you are today was encoded in your DNA at that point. And you want to take something that's going to rewrite that? Look, let's look at machines. You know, you can take Windows, for example. Bill Gates, he makes Windows. You know, let's think about something Bill Gates makes. And let's think about what you do to Bill Gates' code when you start going in under the hub, start programming bits in the registry and changing bits in the kernel, stuff like that. What happens over time? Well, I'll tell you what happens. Typically, you get more and more failures. You get the blue screen coming along because you've tampered with the code. It's not what it was to begin with anymore.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. We think this guy who made Windows is going to put something into us that's going to make us better. You must be insane, even if you don't believe in the end times. Why would you let a man do this to you in the first place?
Correct, you are. And over my dead body will that ever happen to me. Again, I love everybody. There's nothing I wouldn't do for anybody. God has worked through me to help people all over this world and continues to do so, and I praise him for it. I think of ways how to help people, not hurt them. But when it comes to a situation like this, I can assure you, and I'm not depressed. I love my life. I thank God and praise God for my life every day. But I'm telling you right now, if I were faced with this, then I would have a death fight against those that would try and implement this on me or my wife as well. Not going to happen. And so I pray that more people will stand up and realize this for what it is and say, no, you're not doing that to me. Even if it means our lives, this little fleeting life here on earth is meaningless when we compare it to the big picture of being in heaven with God and Yahshua Jesus the Christ. This is fleeting. And so I would rather have my eternal life, my eternal relationship with God, as opposed to having this little fleeting life and buying a lie from the devil, because they're gonna roll out all of Hollywood. This is our great new chance and our great new start for our great new future, and we're going to live forever, and we're going to be superhuman. They're going to roll them all out, and they're going to make that pitch, and a lot of people are going to buy it. But I pray that more and more people will wake up to the truth that it's a lie from the devil, and that we have to stay strong and strong in faith. And if we are really having a true and real and authentic relationship with God, he'll give us holy spiritual discernment to know what is true and what is a lie.
Absolutely, brother. Now, we're going to go into Laurel Canyon in a moment, obviously, but something a little lighter, just to kind of lighten the mood a little before we get there, Bill. And hopefully I'll be able to pull this up here. But I've seen a story during the week that really caught my attention. And I even had a little laugh on my stream. I says, oh, I can only imagine what Bill is going to do when he sees this headline.
Oh, no.
Because
this has got to be Elon Musk involved.
Well, hey, before we get to my headline, I mean, I was thinking of you when I was watching his dragon launching into space on the back of a phoenix and powered by Merlin rockets. I thought, Bill's going to love that.
Talk about connecting dots, right?
Well, check this out, Bill, because you're not a big fan of his girlfriend either, are you?
No, I am not.
Oh, you're going to absolutely be incandescent when you see this one. Because pop star Grimes is selling a piece of her soul. There you go, Bill.
Kev,
I know.
You can't make it up.
It says in her first online exhibition, the musician and new mother with Elon Musk is turning to conceptual art. And here's a little taste for you, Bill. There's some of it there. The next one's really quite striking. Oh, nice horns. Yep.
Well, the name Grimes fits her very nicely, doesn't it?
I knew you'd like that, Bill. I knew you'd like that.
She's grimy for sure.
And I say
and I pray for her.
I say that tongue in cheek. I say it tongue in cheek that you like her. I know that you do.
I do pray for her, though, Kev. I'll tell you this, and I actually pray for both of them. I think they're little urchins, I'm sorry to say, but I pray for both of them because I pray they have bought into this lie. Now, willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowing, and I find it hard to believe that it's unknowingly. They know full well what they're doing and who they're involved with. Think about this now, Kev. I don't care if this little guy's a billionaire or what. How does this individual just come out of nowhere and all of a sudden he's a big fabric of, the Space Force, and he's launching this and that, and he's got the president and the vice president there at his launching. What is this? Who is this individual? He doesn't have any qualifications to be anything, and certainly nothing to have the attention of the president and the vice president of the United States to be there for this launch. It's in plain sight, Kev. these players present themselves in plain sight, and it's unfortunate that most people are so brainwashed they just can't see it for what it is.
You see, we will always agree to disagree on this one. I definitely see him another way. I am. I would never compare anyone or dare say anyone as a new Nikola Tesla. But I think, every generation or so somebody comes along. They're a bit different. They're a game changer. And I must admit, as somebody that's very, very science orientated, I can only admire what the guy's done. When I listen to him, I just hear somebody that's like, and without sounding demeaning or anything like that, but almost very high functioning on the autistic spectrum. Almost,
He's high functioning, all right.
Yeah,
he might
it's
not
like,
even be entirely human, Kev.
It's almost.
He might already have those Neuralink
Are you
things
one? Are you one of these people that think he's cloned, Bill? Is that what you?
I don't know. I don't think that he's cloned,
No?
but it is possible that he may be carrying some of that Neuralink technology in his own brain now.
Nah, you see, I'll give him. I'll back him up. He's always been weird, so he was weird well before the Neuralink came along. But I still think. And here's why I defend him on the Neuralink, and I could be entirely wrong, but it's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the people he does rub shoulders with, I think he has a high chance, or there is a high chance, he's probably seen the very cutting edge AI. And what I mean by that is probably an AGI that is on a D wave, but air gapped. I don't think this AGI is out in the world yet. It's still getting taught. This is my hypothetical scenario.
I could see it.
And I think when he looked at it, he absolutely crapped himself. Pardon my kind of language. Because I think what he's seen terrified him to the point of he had to use his different way of thinking at a problem. How do we avoid the inevitable, this thing that he looked at destroying us? And again, I could be entirely wrong, but I think as he explains himself, and I know I see you shaking your head, Bill, but I do think it's we either join them or we're beaten.
Well, here's one.
I know.
And again, this is where God has to come into this. And so for me, and look, again, I can't twist people to believe or to have faith, or twist their arms to believe or have faith or whatever, nor do I want to.
And I'm sure in the end of the day, Bill, it won't matter when Judgment Day comes how people view Elon. It'll be what you've done yourself, right? It'll be your book that's judged, So whatever.
For me, absolutely. But here's what concerns me is people following after people like this. This is where the concern comes in, because this could change worldviews. This can really have an effect on the masses, because if an individual such as this, and people, okay, I'm going to present this to you right now. If he contacted you and said, Kev, I've been listening to your shows. I think you're brilliant. I would like to get to know you. Come out here to California and let's hang out for a while. And he started introducing philosophies to you that would lead you away from your relationship with God, and totally lead you away from God. And he put it to you straight and say, look, you could follow me, and I'll guarantee you that, you're going to step into this new world.
I'll get my Spotify deal for 50 million.
Right. And so what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to forsake God and your eternal place in his heavenly kingdom, and your covenant, your everlasting covenant with him, for this little Elon Musk or anybody else that would come along and make these, great offers? What would you do? And you really have to say that to yourself. Would I be on board with an individual like this? And so therein lies the problem, to where someone like this is what makes them dangerous. And he's openly stated that he does not believe in God. His girlfriend is a satanic singer. She makes no bones about it. So Jesus said, you'll know them by their fruits. To me, their fruit is rotten.
And, just the thought of being on the same continent as you and selling out to Elon, that would be enough to put me off in the first place anyway, Bill. I've seen the size of you. I watched that Ghost Nation thing. I've seen the size of you, brother. You're a big boy. I'm a small guy. It's no battle.
I love you dearly, and I would be so concerned for you if something like that ever happened. I'd have to go out there and grab a hold of that little Elon Musk myself. But
I think it's good. I think it's good that we can share our differences and talk about them on air, because I think it's important people see that A, we don't agree on everything, and B, that it doesn't affect anything. You know, Geordie Rose, same,
never will.
Same scenario. You know, Geordie came along.
Oh boy, don't get me started on him.
No, Geordie's all right, I promise you. But no, I think it's important we do discuss this, and you know, one day, fingers crossed, as much as it's going to break your heart, Bill, I do hope to be sitting with Elon Musk on screen at one point. I wished it into existence with David Icke, so I'm going to try it. I've done it with Geordie Rose as well, so you never know. Musk might end up here one day.
You never know, because you're growing and you're getting more and more known around the world, and I can attest to that because I've had recent clients, you know, from different parts of the world. I think I told you about the lady I helped in the Czech Republic.
That's
and
amazing.
Belize, and then there was another country which is escaping me right now. I think it was Poland, and there was another one recent. I mean, these people are now people have always contacted me from around the world. I've helped people in, now it's 43 different countries, but since we've been doing this show, more and more people are reaching out internationally.
Yeah, and I know the Kev Baker show is going down very well, down under as well right now. So big shout out.
That's the country. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, it was Australia. A person from Australia just contacted me the other day that heard me on your show.
I don't know what that's all about, dude. I'm loving working with the Australian people, though. They really are like family. But, brother, wonderful. I suppose after an hour, we could be here all night because we would talk all night. But I suppose we better get to the meat and potatoes of what we're really here for today, right?
Yeah.
The craziness in Laurel Canyon. And I called today's show Laurel Canyon and the Psy-Op 60s. Now, I have to pay credit to somebody else in the musical truth genre, and I use that term because that's the name of his books. Mark Devlin.
Yeah, I like him. I've read a couple of his books as well. Very good. Very, very informed individual.
And I've done a number of shows with Mark. Big shout out to him. And he was the one that really gave me that term, the Psy-Op 60s. So I'm not going to steal it off him. I'll give him credit for it. I'll borrow it. Because I think, Bill, when we're finished by today, people, and my mum will be listening, she'll probably know most of the stars that we're going to talk about. And I don't think...
Hi, Pearl, we got to say hi to her.
Kenny last week was blown away by the Paul McCartney thing. And I think this week, some of the names we bring up, to anyone who hasn't heard this before, it's going to change the way that they look at this swinging 60s, the summer of love, all that good stuff. So first off, Laurel Canyon. I mean, talk to the audience about where it is, and probably the best place to start is Lookout Mountain, right?
Yeah, and you know, you're hitting the nail right on the head. Laurel Canyon is a mountainous neighborhood canyon located in the Hollywood Hills region of the Santa Monica Mountains in the Hollywood Hills West District of Los Angeles in California. I have been to many places around that area in several of my trips to Los Angeles. I have not been in the exact location of Laurel Canyon, but I've been very close in other places nearby. Beautiful place, but boy, oh boy, I'm firmly convinced, certainly after reading David McGowan's book, after the first time I read it, I was convinced that there is something to this. How in the world do you just suddenly have this movement that just comes out of nowhere, and some of these musicians are coming from as far as Canada to be at this place where nothing was happening in the first place, then all of a sudden everything's happening. It just does not feel organic to me. Very, very arranged. And you mentioned Lookout Mountain. There was a military installation installed there, put in on this Lookout Mountain. and it was called an Air Force installation at first. I think it was called Lookout Mountain Air Force Station. And it's a former defense site, which today is the private residence of the actor Jared Leto. Isn't that interesting that he owns this now? And the installation produced motion pictures and still photographs for the United States Department of Defense and the Atomic Energy Commission as well, from 1947 to 1969. It's a 100,000 square foot facility built on 2.5 acres, and it was built in 1941, again, as a World War II air defense center to coordinate Los Angeles area radar installations. The studio was established in 1947, and the studio consisted of one large sound stage, a film laboratory, 2 screening rooms, 4 editing rooms, an animation and still photo department, sound mixing studio, and numerous climate-controlled film vaults. Using the latest equipment, the studio could process both 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter color motion picture films, as well as black and white and color still photographs. In 1953, the new Lookout Mountain facility had an estimated value of $1.5 million. That was a lot of money back then. In the 1960s, Lookout Mountain was staffed by more than 250 military and civilian personnel. The studio employed many talented civilians as producers, writers, directors, cameramen, editors, animators. Many of these had worked at Warner Brothers, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Universal, RKO Pictures. In addition, many of the producers and directors were veterans of Frank Capra's World War II film unit or had been with combat photo teams of the Army, Navy, and Marines.
Okay, Bill, let's break in there, because that paragraph, that is so important, because it's when I start to find out this Lookout Mountain place, and I think it was might have been Jay Dyer, might have been Jamie Henshaw. I've had so many people come onto the show over the years and talk about this.
Yeah.
But it's when you find out you've got this Air Force base, right? And it's dedicated to the production of movies. I mean, you kind of start to blur the lines between Hollywood and the military here. And what we're looking at, Bill, in no uncertain terms, if this was in Soviet Russia, if this was in East Germany, Nazi Germany, this would be a propaganda factory.
Yeah, you got it. That's exactly right. And furthermore, they brought in big wigs, some of the Hollywood royalty, like Gregory Peck and Bob Hope and Jimmy Stewart, to narrate these films. And upon their bringing these individuals in, these individuals were sworn to secrecy. So there was a lot of top secret stuff going on here. And I guess, how can I say this? Let's just say this, that Bob Hope had many accusations against him during his lifetime, MK Ultra type of things, and having perhaps, and again, I can't prove it one way or the other, but I guess it is worth mentioning that it was rumored and speculated that Bob Hope had these types of powerful ties with the military-industrial complex and power elite, and also was part of having sex slaves and things of that nature through MK Ultra. Now, can I prove it? No, I cannot. However, I have read a lot about it and seen a lot of speculation that would lead one to believe that there is some truth behind that.
Absolutely. And you've got Hitchcock movies been made there, right?
Yeah. I
mean, you've got all sorts going on.
You got to look at that and you go, okay, what is this? And you hit the nail right on the head, what you just said, a propaganda factory that goes a step further. Because if you have this type of installation that is capable of putting out this type of material, and if in fact they are working with the power elite to establish something, perhaps they came up with a plan, a major social engineering type of plan, just like we discussed last week uh, about, Fall and Tavistock, how they were social engineers in creating these bands. And that's what it is, social engineering, and it is for these types of plans to, whether that is to destabilize families or just to implement agendas on the populace, whatever it may be, or maybe just because they can do it and just to see how far they can go. And I believe that's when we talked about Charles Manson. I think that had a lot to do with the programming on him. Let's just see how far this goes. Let's see what he does. So I truly and strongly believe that this facility and those that were the masterminds behind this engineered this hippie movement and put this whole plan together, and then brought in these singers and these bands from all over the place, as far away as Canada and Germany as well. John Kay from the band of Steppenwolf came from Germany. So they brought in all these players, and whether they were individual performers or bands, to create this type of social engineering to create a resistance and a rebellion like we're seeing right now. I find it very interesting and very clever also from these higher ups to see how far they could go with this. And Kev, I firmly believe that this is what the whole thing was about, because a lot of these people that were brought in, they hailed from the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia corridor, okay? This is CIA territory, FBI, all the military, black ops type of stuff. They came to Laurel Canyon from those areas. And a lot of these people had either their dads or family members were very high up in the either alphabet agencies or the military, and some were also part of MK Ultra.
And I think it's the MK Ultra mind control bit added to the Tavistock social engineering stuff that we talked about last week, that we really need to emphasize why it's so important, why there would be a need to control the music, the movies, stuff like that. And it's so that you can basically steer a population and take them in a direction to somewhere you want to go in the future. You want to change the fabric of the way things are. You've got a long-term plan, and you need to do it in stages. And even more so, you need to make it feel like the people are doing it themselves. The people
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and this is why, maybe on the face of it, when you first start saying to people, all of your favorite singers from the 60s and things, they were all CIA, it's too much for people. But then when you start to lay out why, the why behind it, and then the connections into all of it, and some of the names that we're going to lay out here, I mean, people will have heard them, right? But they connect right into the very military that we've been talking about in this area, that have been using this location. And Navy comes up quite a lot in this, as it always does when it comes to the world of Psy-Ops and spooks and things. And I think there's probably one of the most famous names, out there, who has a direct connection through his family and the Navy into all of this. And that would be, of course, Jim Morrison.
The Lizard King.
Couldn't have named him better myself, right?
Yeah, there you go. And this James Douglas Morrison just came out of nowhere and said that he had no aspirations to be a singer, couldn't play any instruments. So I find that interesting. How do you write? Because I've written songs, not saying they're great songs, but I've written, 20 or 30 songs in my lifetime. And you have to, for me, I have to sit down with the guitar and, I'm hearing something in my head. Now I've got to translate that, transfer it through music and through keys and notes and pitches, so I can make that a song. This guy said that he couldn't play any instruments, So how in the world is he going to write any songs? So Tavistock comes to mind right away when thinking about this guy. You know, did somebody pre-write these songs for him? I don't know. He said he was a poet. Again, how do you transfer poetry into structured music, into songs? Very difficult unless you have somebody either right there assisting you with everything, which he very well may have had, or if the person is writing it for you and saying, here's the words, just sing these. So I find that very suspect right off the bat. And then secondly, this individual said that the devil came to him and, all of a sudden he has this all thrust upon him because the devil came to him and he became the Lizard King. And it's interesting that reference, the Lizard King, because that comes up over and over and over again in these circles with these different artists. So the reptilian lizard type of reference comes up quite a bit. Jim Morris's dad was Admiral George Stephen Morrison. And so he was the admiral of the USS Von Home Richard. Okay, so there's a picture, and you may have put it up there. I don't know. I can't see it. Of Morrison with his dad in 1964 on this very ship. And more importantly, Admiral Morrison was the guy that was involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident that never happened. It wasn't a false flag. It was just an out-and-out lie saying that the ship was attacked and this is what kicked off the Vietnam War and all this stuff. It never happened. And this is the guy that was the admiral of that ship. Isn't that interesting?
That makes him a very, very unique person because very few people get read in to compartmentalized operations. So the fact that he was chosen, and you don't just pick anyone if you're going to pull off something like this. You go to somebody you can rely on, somebody who is tight, he's with you. He knows your skeletons, you know his. And
Yeah.
the reason I bring that up is to show that this is a very big player in military circles. And then for his son to just turn up, like the Lizard King, this rebellious
Yeah.
figure against the
And I mean,
establishment.
just seemingly overnight, Kev, that this guy shows up on the scene. He gets with a guy named Ray Manzarek. They meet in an art class. So, okay, you meet in an art class. Nobody's playing any music. Manzarek's supposed to be a keyboard player. They meet in art class, and then they add on these other two guys, John Densmore on drums and Robbie Krieger on guitar. None of these individuals were ever in a band before, and they suddenly come together as a band. And not only do they come together as a band, they don't even play backyard parties or anything like that. They come together as a band that none of them have ever played in a band, not only together, but never in a band, period. And they rise to this superstardom, and they have all these songs, and they're all hit songs and all this stuff. And I just shake my head.
And Bill, Jim Morrison, one of the biggest names probably that we could go to. But there's many more. I mean, give us the lowdown. You've put together this big article here. Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa.
He's another one. Zappa was born here in Maryland, and he is the son of what was, of course, neither are with us any longer, but his dad was very high up, again, in the MK Ultra, and was out there at Edgewood Arsenal, which is outside north of Baltimore. And so Zappa lived here with his family until, I guess, the dad's orders got changed and had to go out to California. And he's another one. Now, I will say this about Zappa. Zappa was a brilliant musician. He was a fantastically talented guitarist. I cannot take that away from him. And composed a lot of songs, although I think they were garbage, with his topic. And dear God, if you read some of the lyrics, it's repulsive. But I cannot take away the fact that he was a brilliant guitarist. But they, the father, I guess the family leaves Baltimore and then moves out there to California. And then he happens upon the scene, and not only happens upon the scene, but seems to be in charge. And he's staying at this mansion called the Log Cabin. So, again, I've tried to dig into the background of Frank Zappa, and there's always this gap to where did he get the money to be able to move into this mansion called the Log Cabin there on Lookout Mountain there in Laurel Canyon. How did this just all of a sudden happen overnight that this guy now has it would take tremendous funds, I would imagine, to be able to pull that off. And all of a sudden, now he's this gigantic star, and he is playing host / handler to every major star that comes through the Los Angeles, Laurel Canyon areas. They all went to Zappa. They all stayed at the Log Cabin. And it produced a cavalcade of people like Alice Cooper, and then this character named Captain Beefheart. Oh, dear God, Kev, I sent you videos on him.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at him in a moment. But this Frank Zappa character, yeah, very interesting. And I like the description you used. I think it's very accurate. Handler.
Yeah, and he was touted, a lot of these artists said that he had that military mentality, that he was absolutely in control, and he was a dictator and was very unpleasant to be around.
Well,
so
we'll need to take that into account, maybe. It's something I've not really thought about too much before. And it's not to give any people any out or anything, but we're talking about the military. We're talking about a time when LSD was very much being experimented with. These people themselves, the Zappas, the Jim Morrisons, very much brainwashed themselves, and who knows what kind of experiments, what deals they done. Like you say, how did Zappa just end up in the canyon? And I like how you chose the word a commune for this log cabin.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's what it was. And furthermore, I was repulsed the more I read into McGowan's book about how Zappa was sexualizing his children and then having them to be exposed to nude men walking around the house and all this kind of stuff. And they were, I think it was Moon Unit that David McGowan talks about in the book, was encouraged to take showers with these individuals. And I mean, it's repulsive, Kev. And, just to have a visual, it's sickening.
It is. And I'm not smiling, but I talked about how this is long-term goals in the future, and you're going back to a time when, again, the family unit, that nuclear family, 2.4 kids as we called it over here, mother, father, everyone happy, dad going out to work, simpler times. But they were wanting to change all of that. They wanted to change the fabric of everything. And what you're talking about there, this kind of the sexualization of children, all of that cavorting around. Can't go there just yet. It's too much of a jump back in the 60s. But we can see that's the attitude they want to take us towards. And so slowly over time, they steer the culture, the people into that direction where we are now with over 100 genders. And hey, each to their own. But I think we got far better in simpler times,
Oh, well, again, it's par for the course. And so the things that were implemented back then incrementally have now bled over and carried over into the times that we're in, that is actually fueling the degradation of society in this downward spiral that we've been in for so long now. So the first thing that, if you really look at this for what it is and for what it was, it is based on rebellion. Okay, so that's number one. So when we see rebellion, we have to say, okay, well, what were they rebelling against? They would say that they were rebelling against the status quo, society, and everything that it stood for. But I say it goes much further and deeper than that. I think that the plan and agenda was to get them to rebel against God. So that's where it began. And once you created the rebellion against God, then you take God out of everything. So when you take God out of everything, it goes right back to good old Aleister Crowley, do what thou will is the whole of the law. And that very much was embedded in the fabric of this whole entire thing.
No, you're absolutely right here. I'm just looking through some of the stuff you've written down here. I mean, this log cabin, Bill, you've gone into great description about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you want to talk more about that, but then you've got Danny Hutton. You've got a whole heap of names in here, man.
Oh, yeah. And again, at that log cabin, if you saw, I'm sure you did in the notes, the place had secret tunnels and passages and all this. Why? And a lot of the homes there in the area, including homes like Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson, they all had these secret tunnels and passageways and connected underground to other homes in the area. And you have to ask yourself, why? What is this about? Why would they do that?
The only other house I've been to that's ever had an underground tunnel to anywhere, you know where it is, Bill?
Yeah.
Boleskine House.
Yeah. I knew you were going to say
Yep,
that. Yeah.
Boleskine House has got a tunnel that goes right underneath the graveyard, no kidding, into an outhouse. It's just a big stone building. And I don't know what it was used for back in the day, but I do know now that obviously you get occult groups going up there. You can tell from their graffiti that, that they date it for you. But yeah, this tunnel under the house, I was kind of getting lost there. I didn't know if you were talking about the 60s or Epstein, to be honest with you.
It's all one and the same, brother. And again, I shudder to think, and this is purely speculation on my part, what I'm about to say, because I can't prove this, but I can speculate and give my opinion. Perhaps these tunnels, the way they were and the way they are now, are being used for satanic rituals, satanic ritual abuse, and sex trafficking as well. Again, this is pure speculation on my part, but I wouldn't be surprised one bit if what I'm speculating about here isn't true.
Sorry, Bill, I kind of took a drink there and it went down the wrong way. But you go into somebody called, you better take over just now because that's caught my throat.
Okay.
No, I am. Yeah, it just went down the wrong way. That's okay.
I've done that many times. It's terrible. And again, we see all these players in this, and like Kev mentioned, Frank Zappa and Jim Morrison, people like Carole King, the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, Canned Heat, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, the Eagles, Arthur Lee and his band Love, Neil Young, Brian and Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, James Taylor, Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, Harry Nilsson, who was best friends with John Lennon, Mama Cass Elliott of the Mamas and Papas, and John Phillips, who, again, this is another individual that was connected, was a serviceman himself, was in the Navy in Annapolis, and family, very, very high up military people.
Well, just thinking about it there, and I've got my throat back now, I've got my breath
God.
back. You were mentioning how Frank Zappa, very central to the people that were moving into the canyon, the ones that were being promoted. And I was trying to think, do we have anyone nowadays that fits that bill? Oh, yeah, we do. He's called Jay-Z.
Yep, that's right.
And rap music, love it, hate it. It's the thing. People are into it nowadays. I can't stand music nowadays, but it seems everyone that wants to get a contract, you have to go through Rockefeller, his company, his record company. The name of it itself tells you everything you need to know about this cat.
Correct.
What we're talking about today has never stopped, folks. It's kind of morphed, it's changed, but there's new characters, but still all of the same
things.
The
game remains the same, yeah.
Big time, Bill. Big time.
That's very good. You're a very good point. You're absolutely right. And so you have these individuals like that character Jay-Z, who has a monopoly, and he's cemented himself as the the kingpin through this brotherhood, that he would be the guy that these other aspiring rappers would have to go through in order to have their piece of the Illuminati pie. And so there you go. And it's through people like him and this Rick Ross individual and all these other people
I'm just giggling at the chat room. Somebody said, "Oh no, every band that Bill just rung off there, that was like my older siblings' bands." And then somebody was saying, "Not this one, not that one." And the point being, if they were a big band back in that time and they got a bit of traction, you know, that they were one of the big things, there's a good chance that they were coming from the Canyon, because this is where it was all being directed out of.
Exactly. And you think about it, before this happened, the music hub would have been New York. Now, Motown in Detroit, that was for the R&B acts, the soul acts. But if you wanted the big recording contracts, and if you were any type of rock band or trying to start out that way, it was all going through New York. And then all of a sudden, just seemingly overnight, not long after this facility switches gears in the MK Ultra way, that you see these bands and stars showing up in mass, and then this whole thing goes full swing, and everything now goes through the Los Angeles area, and at that time Laurel Canyon. And I could just read name after name after name after name. It's endless, the people that either lived there or were a part of that scene. The Beatles, Elvis. When Elvis was out there in California doing movies, he was frequenting Laurel Canyon and those parties. You know, Mama Cass had all these gigantic and outrageous parties. Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees, Peter Tork. It says Twerk's home was considered one of the Laurel Canyon's biggest party houses, with all-night drug-fueled sleepovers, well attended by the hippest musicians and movie stars of the area. It was also frequented by good old Charles Manson and his followers as well. So, and that's another point that I want to make now, is that Charles Manson was very connected to all of these players, and they knew him well, and they knew the people that followed him. And I believe that Manson was a liaison for some of these stars as a drug dealer, or the go-between for the drug dealer and the star. And so I think that's why he was so popular with a lot of these stars out there. But make no mistake, they knew him, and they knew him well.
This is how it all weaves together from last week's show, because I'm with you, Bill. I think, my opinion, I do think he was kind of like, his in was the dealing aspect. And he was known by the same characters that was handling the likes of Frank Zappa. And we can see that the way we went over some of it last week, you know?
Yeah.
And another character you brought up, and I've never heard of this dude ever, is Captain Beefheart.
Oh, dear
Who the
God.
heck is Captain Beefheart, Bill?
And most people don't even know who that character is. And I find that very interesting that, you know, when you go back to this and they go, who? This Captain Beefheart character was actually a very good friend of Frank Zappa. They went to school together. And he, too, was a very talented musician, especially when it came to playing saxophone and harmonica and things of that nature. He was very talented. I can't take that from him. However, to say that this individual was eccentric would certainly be an understatement.
I'm looking at one of his album covers here, the Throat Massacre replica.
Oh, dear God. I mean, and to hear that guy sing, Kev, I don't know if you took a minute or so to listen to him actually sing.
That's a minute of my life I won't get back.
Oh.
It's poor, dude.
Indescribable.
Thankfully, for copyright reasons, I can't subject the audience to that. I wouldn't have done it anyway.
Let's just say it would be an unforgettable experience to listen to a few minutes of Captain Beefheart and his magic band. Now, that said,
There he is with Zappa right there, you know.
There you go. They were very close friends. And Zappa also had him under his label for a while, but Beefheart had a habit of going around to all these different labels and getting monies from them and signing with them. And so you always had these conflict of interest, and people would want to sue him because he would get these monies from these different labels. Just a very bizarre individual, very Manson-esque as well, because he too, like Manson, was able to exhibit, and I think Zappa to a degree as well, they were able to exhibit control over their subjects. And with Beefheart, it was his band members. And maybe it was through manipulations through drugs. And so if you kept these people doped up, you would keep them under control and compliant as well. But boy, Kev, just reading some of these notes here.
I think these people know how to identify somebody that is easily manipulated as well. And usually somebody that's down on their luck, maybe somebody that's had a bad childhood themselves, homeless, drug problem, usually something that this person can then come in and use. And all of that's got the hallmarks of mind control in itself.
Sure,
you know?
But Beefheart didn't have any of that. He had a very good home life, very good upbringing, was a spoiled child that his mother would wait on him hand and foot, and they were upper middle class. And so he didn't know what it was like to struggle at all. He was his own worst enemy, but yet could still exhibit that type of control over these individuals who were down and out, who didn't have anything. And boy, I know you read this as well, Kev, to where when they were making, I think it was this Trout Mask replica album, and it was released by Frank Zappa's Straight Records label. It says it's considered to be his signature work. I listened to a couple minutes of it, and I couldn't listen anymore. It was horrible.
It's pretty grim, Bill.
Just, you look at it and you go, okay, is this something from Chuck Barris's Gong Show? Or you just, there's no way you could stay with it. I couldn't anyway. But during the making of that album, it is saying that it was rumored, and McGowan talks about it, that the musicians in his band were restricted from leaving. So they rented out this small house in Laurel Canyon and made this Trout Mask replica album. And the musicians were forced to be detained in the house, and they were working on this 14 hours a day. They were sleep deprived. They were starving.
I mean, it makes them sound like they're almost rats in a Skinner box, you know, and experiment themselves.
Exactly right. So again, we look and say, who was this Beefheart character, and was he? It seems to me like he was very Manson-esque, and so again, he would encourage violence. One band member to another, he would have them. Through sleep and food deprivation, just like you stated there, Kev. I mean, these people were literally going out of their minds. And so he would scream at them and beat on them himself, humiliate them, made sure that they were drugged up to the point of total compliance. They lived in poverty and squalor with public assistance. The band's only income, according to this, which I find hard to believe, because Beefheart was probably getting, I'm quite certain that he got upfront royalties from Zappa for the album being on his label. I'm certain. So the band may have been in squalor and starving, but I'll guarantee you Captain Beefheart wasn't. So he had these for a full month. It says that he abused the musicians and had them surviving on a single cup of beans, 1 cup per each per day. Can you imagine? How could these people even play their instruments being in that type of mental and physical state? I can't imagine.
Like I say, they themselves part of some kind of social engineering experiment, you know?
Yeah, there's no question about it. So Beefheart then went on, after the album is Zappa gets it out, and he claims sole credit for the composing and arranging, and yet it was a collaborative effort. So these people were working 14 hours a day with him on everything and all the parts, and just an amazing story that, again, one individual could have that level of control over a group to where they would be totally subservient, totally compliant, and totally beaten down as well.
And in here, you've also got how he gave kind of names to the band members. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Let's see. He would.
I mean, before you go into that, that to me, from what we're talking about, it starts to get into dissociative personality
Correct.
syndrome and the creation of multiple personalities.
Absolutely correct. You took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly right, and I believe that's what he did. So, for instance, it says that John French was the drummer of the band, and he renamed him Drumbo. And he had names for everyone, and I find it interesting because Charles Manson did the same thing. He would rename these people that joined up with him. They would all have these new names. So it's the same thing. So you're exactly right in what you said.
I think, from the shows I've done on the deep kind of MK Ultra, MK Monarch type stuff, this is a big part of it. And what you were describing there, 8 months kind of locked up in a house, made to do this, that, sleep deprived, that's highly traumatic to the mind. And, that's when you are able then to create multiple personalities.
Because you're causing mind fractures. Absolutely right.
And that's why, and for anyone out there, I think two of the best examples you can see of this are Britney Spears, who sometimes breaks into an English accent and starts talking as if she's from England.
And one of her alters.
Yeah, Nicki Minaj, who's got somebody called Roman inside her. She's got the ghost of somebody called Roman inside her, and she turns into Roman, and that's multiple personalities, folks, and that comes at the hands of some real traumatic stuff when you're growing up. And that's where sometimes I kind of find myself torn, Bill, because, more of the pop stars nowadays compared to the ones we're talking about here, the ones that have been through the Disney Club and that kind of conveyor belt.
MK Ultra stuff there, yeah.
It's easy to go after them, and I have often, and even the Poppies and the Billie Eyelashes of this world. But there's a big voice in my head that says, Kev, be very aware that these people themselves have been victims.
Because, no, it's true.
Yeah, if they've gone through this stuff, now it doesn't take away if they go on then to repeat the stuff that they've been through, but we've got to be very careful when we're dealing with these things, because there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, isn't there, Bill? And
a lot more.
Yeah.
And you have these handlers, again, like a Frank Zappa type, and I believe that Fall is one of these handlers as well currently, and has been for a long time. And there are many.
You blew my mum's mind with that. You blew her mind. She's like,
oh, God bless you, Pearl.
And Kenny as well. He from my mum.
Kenny.
Because we're all isolated right now, and we don't get to see each other much, But she was telling me Kenny just kind of made him think about things totally differently. And that's the point of this, right? Because sometimes
it is the point of it.
Not everyone's
I'd rather know the truth than to live in a lie. And look, if people want to believe that there's nothing to what we said, and that he's the same Paul McCartney that he was, when it all started, well, good for you. That's fine. If you want to believe that, that's great.
And it might be old news to some of us, some of the things we're going over, but not to everyone. And to new people coming to the party, and I always like to think there's more and more people waking up as we go along. I like to think we're given those kind of aha moments. Wow, I had no idea that was happening. And when you do that, that's when you start to open your mind to the fact that things that you've never thought about before, things you never thought were possible, you start to gain an appreciation for the world not quite being the way we've always been told it is. And that bears true for almost any topic. Music, films, any of the stuff that we always get into on the show here. And these last two shows, talk about mind-blowing, the connections, the dots we've been putting together, Bill. And again, I think it was perfect. We didn't plan it. But you've got
No.
the whole kind of the Mansons into this stuff here. And I know that you've still got more stuff on more of these people here. I mean, we've not
Oh,
even finished, right?
yeah, it's
And I
an
think
endless list.
the next one you go into, and again, this is something that was written by Nick Bryant. Now tell us what this is all about.
All right, let me see if I can find where there's so many notes in front of me right
You
now.
see, I'm following down nicely. I've got it. I've got it all kind of down, man. You see?
Okay, I got it.
That's
Yeah, I
why I'm
got
the
it.
host with the most, Bill. That's what they
Yeah, well,
say
you
anyway.
are. You absolutely are. You're the lifeline here.
Something like
Praise
that.
God. The following was written by Nick Bryant, and it was the foreword to David McGowan's book. Laurel Canyon was the fountainhead for peace, love, and brown rice vibes that overflowed America's airwaves as the Vietnam War raged. But lurking beneath the tie-dyed and florid veneer was an exquisite darkness of drugs, unbridled debauchery, full tilt depravity, and shocking carnage. Something that he failed to add, which I will add here, was Satanism. Satanism was rampant and witchcraft rampant through these stars and entertainers back in that time. Now, that's a fact. When the readers of this book are delivered to Laurel Canyon's blood-drenched tapestry of murder and mayhem, they will have to decide whether or not those sinister synchronicities are uncanny coincidence, conspiracies, or perhaps a kaleidoscopic blending of both. Sprinkled throughout these pages is the ominous specter of the military intelligence complex, and perched quite literally atop Laurel Canyon was the top secret Lookout Mountain Laboratory, which seems to be McGowan's grand metaphor for Dr. Strangelove having a bird's eye view of the nascent hippie movement, treating it as though it were a petri dish brimming with a lethal biological weapon that could be unleashed in the meticulously monitored increments. Indeed, many of Laurel Canyon's rock and roll idols had former incantations steeped in the world of military intelligence operations. Jim Morrison, aka the Lizard King, was one such example. Mr. Mojo Risens didn't like to talk about his parents and wasn't even known to tell reporters that or was also known to tell reporters that his parents were dead. And I have seen interviews like that, Kev, to where he was asked a question about his parents, and he would simply say they were dead and they died in a car wreck, and that there was a movie called The Doors that was made, starred Val Kilmer, and that's how they started the movie, with this car wreck and all that, and just amazing. But as it turns out, Lizard King Sr. was not only alive and well, he just happened to be the commander of the U.S. warship that allegedly came under attack by North Vietnamese torpedo boats in the Gulf of Tonkin, sparking America's napalm-fueled bloodbath in Vietnam. Again, an incident that never happened. Frank Zappa, another major mover and shaker in the Laurel Canyon scene, was certainly the raddest of the rad, so surely he couldn't have had any connections to the military intelligence complex, right? Not exactly. According to various accounts collected by McGowan, Zappa was a pro-military autocrat who didn't really resonate with the counterculture's peace and love vibe. Neither did Charles Manson, I might add, by the way. He was the same thing. He didn't like the hippies. He was just a controller of them. Like the Lizard King's dad, Zappa Sr. was a cog in the intelligence community's dark mechanisms, and Francis Zappa was a chemical warfare specialist with a top security clearance at Edgewood Arsenal near Baltimore, Maryland. Some readers might recognize Edgewood as the location of the ominous mind control experiments conducted by the CIA under the rubric of MK Ultra. So there you go. Guilt by familiar association has the potential to be an ill-fated formula for speculation, but McGowan relates accounts of Laurel Canyon luminaries whose own hands were possibly awash in the blood of the military intelligence complex. Consider, for example, Papa John Phillips, who penned the smash hit San Francisco, Be Sure to Wear Flowers in Your Hair, employing thousands of runaways to make a back challenge pilgrimage, couldn't say that right, to the city by the bay. The son of a Marine Corps captain, Phillips was among the more prominent fixtures of Laurel Canyon who had particularly interesting interrelationship with the military-industrial complex. John Phillips was a naval officer and was stationed here in Annapolis, Maryland for a time. He had ties to the CIA. He lived in Langley, Virginia as well, CIA country there, and the Northern Virginia corridor. And he met his first wife, who was an intelligence officer in Virginia. So rock superstar Stephen Stills was the co-founder of two Laurel Canyon dynamos, Buffalo Springfield, and of course, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Surely then, hippie icon Stills couldn't possibly be enmeshed in the military intelligence complex, right? Maybe, maybe not. The story goes that Stills is from another military family, and he spent chunks of his childhood in El Salvador, Costa Rica, and Panama. Furthermore, Stills made many statements and proclamations saying that he was part of the CIA and had spent time in Vietnam in the early 60s. So wouldn't surprise me, that's for sure. And McGowan introduces us to aging beatnik Vito Paulikas and his freaks. Now, this guy Vito is very connected to Zappa and the whole scene, but Zappa was the main connection that he had. And Vito would have this group of hippies that would go to these concerts. So if it were Zappa or the Byrds or somebody that were playing at one of these clubs there on the Sunset Strip, Vito and his gang would come in there and they would dance and get the crowd going. So the crowd would be really into more so into Vito and his gang than the band that was performing on stage. But it looked very well for the band because the house was full, and you had this instigator Vito and his gang, inciting the crowd. And interesting with Vito, and again, you're talking about people that were into black magic and Satanism and witchcraft. And there's a story about his young son, I believe his name was Godo, that the child had this mysterious death, and there were varying accounts of it, but supposedly he fell. They were up on a roof doing some type of dance ritual, and the child supposedly fell through the skylight to his death. And interestingly enough, Kev, after that, Vito and his wife and the gang went out to a club that night dancing, knowing that his son is dead. They still went out and they partied with the band and did their drugs, and just it's absolutely unfathomable to think that actually took place in that way. But when you have people that are living in that type of lifestyle, which is a drug-fueled lifestyle, reality escapes them. And then when you factor in the Satanism aspect and the black magic and the witchcraft and the rituals,
that's where I was going to go. Yeah,
totally someplace else.
Yeah, that's where I was probably going to lean towards, the fact that there might have been something else going on here. And Jim Morrison, I think, but a lot of these characters that came out of this era, this kind of location, this movement, air quotes, didn't they end up being part of, or some of the first members of the 27 Club?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another bizarre thing and I do believe, Kev, that when these people enter into these types of agreements, literally, in my opinion, making a deal with the devil's going to come calling. And whether that is the devil himself that is creating something, a tragedy for these people to be caught up in, or it is these handlers that are, again, subservient to the underlings, which I believe quite possibly could be reptilian demonic entities that are part of the satanic kingdom. And if there's any truth to that, then they are the overlords for these power elites that would be the handlers of these types of stars. So the directives come down.
Well, I'll not let you go alone on that. I'll agree with you. I'll back you up. I really do think that. I
Yeah,
don't know if they're
it's
directly related, i.e., the DNA, or whether literally they're just being used as tools. But there is absolutely some outside entity manipulating all of that. There just
yeah.
is. There just is,
There's no
Bill.
question
Yep.
about it, Kev. Anybody that's awake could really see the bigger picture and say, okay, there has to be, because these directives come down and then all of a sudden these people are gone. And like you said, the 27 Club, there's so many in that club. You just, again, shake your head and you go, how is this possible? So we see this ritualistic type of uh, death take place over and over and over again. It happened back then and it's still happening to this day.
And I think there's something round about that age as well. And it comes to the whole Monarch MK Ultra programming. You see, again, I'll use Britney Spears, perfect example, 27. That's when she started to go back crap crazy, when we started to see her shaving her hair. And I think that's when the programming breaks down. I think that's when we
I
start
totally agree.
to reach some level of maturity. Something happens in the brain. And I think at that point, you know, like Bill's saying, I think a lot of the people that are in the 27 Club, we need to really question how they get there. And this deal that they make, and they do make that deal, and it sounds so kind of a conspiracy trope, so tinfoil hatty, but they want us to think that because they want to make it sound ridiculous because it's true.
Yeah.
And some of them end up in the 27 Club. Sometimes we get a window into what happens when the programming breaks down. Britney
Yes.
Spears, for example. And yeah, this 27
And
Club
many
thing,
others.
yeah, it's preposterous when you start to look at the number of times that age becomes significant. It's beyond anomalous, Bill. You know, I don't do coincidences at the best of times.
Yeah, I absolutely. I don't believe there's anything,
Yeah.
there's such thing as a coincidence. Everything means something. And back to that the little boy that Vito's son, the Godot child. Um, he was tapped to play the role of Satan, Lucifer, in the Kenneth Anger film. And for those who don't know who Kenneth Anger is, he I'm not sure if he's still alive or not. I doubt that he is, but he was a satanic, I believe, another satanic handler in this whole thing. And he made movies such as one called Lucifer Rising, which also featured Charles Manson, one of Charles Manson's family members, Bobby Beausoleil, who actually wrote the soundtrack from prison with another Manson family member named Steve Clem Grogan.
Well,
They
check
wrote
that
the
out, Bill.
soundtrack from prison.
Check that out. I mean, I don't know. You can see my screen, right? Look at the picture of Anger that I've got on the screen
There you
now.
go. Yeah, that's him.
Lucifer, right
Kenneth
across
Anger.
his chest. Yeah, that's him.
So now Anger also had ties to Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, and also Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. And Jimmy Page was the one that was to write the soundtrack for Lucifer's Rising first. But Jimmy Page at that time had a horrible heroin addiction and was unable to do it. So then Anger approached Mick Jagger, and then he goes to Bobby Beausoleil. Mick Jagger, if I'm not mistaken, ended up playing the role of Satan in that film. After the little child was killed, then I think it was Mick Jagger who played the role in that Lucifer Rising. That was the name of the film. But Anger made a lot of these satanic propaganda films. Furthermore, I believe that he was connected through Manson and to Manson through the Process Church, another satanic church, and the Church of Satan as well. All these places were connected in some way, and all the same players were connected in that and interconnected and intertwined with each other. So I find that very interesting as well.
Yeah, and you've named a whole heap of the kind of Hollywood A-list at the time: Warren Beatty, Peter
Yeah.
and Jane Fonda,
Jack Nicholson.
Candice Bergen, Marlon Brando, Roman Polanski and Sharon
Another
Tate.
evil character.
The Sharon Tate, of course, from the Manson thing. We got Peter Lawford, Dennis Hopper, Ryan O'Neill, Maya Farrow, Peter Sellers, and Zsa Zsa Gabor were among Papa John and Mama Michelle Phillips' circle of friends.
And here's another interesting thing, Kev. When Polanski, who was in London making a film at the time of the murders there. So this is what I read. Again, can I prove it? No. But I've read this, that while Sharon Tate is there pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and was just absolutely butchered by those demonic, I don't know what to call them, henchmen of the devil. He was in London reportedly having an affair with John Phillips' wife, Michelle Phillips. She was there in London with him at the time that this was going on. Now, Roman Polanski, just do some research into him, not a good person. And again, another one that was in the satanic circles, another one that committed a wicked and heinous act of rape against a young, I think she was 13 or 14-year-old girl. That's why he's not in the United States now. That's why he has to live in France, because he can't come back here because he'll be in jail if he does. And it's been rumored that he's done some far wickeder things than that, and may have actually had a hand in authorizing the murders of his wife and unborn child and those other people as well. Now, I can't prove that, but I've certainly read that about him. And in studying that little character, let's just say it would not surprise me. He fits the mold. He reminds me of, there are 3 people that kind of interconnect with each other in look, in stature, and perhaps in philosophy as well. And you're not going to like this. Polanski, that little Eckhart Tolle that was Oprah's little guru there for a while, and our good friend Elon Musk. These people, they have the same look, they have the same demeanor, and they seem to be cut from the same type of cloth. You can't make it up.
Oh, you going after Musk again, Bill? Again?
I just had to add it in. They just are the same ilk.
I'll tell you what, dude. I'll tell you what. I had never seen it before. I'd never seen it before, but you know, I can't get away from the fact that there is a little bit of Elon. There is a look about him. There is. I can't get away from that fact. But hey, Bill, hey, come on, man.
I love you dearly, but
dang, that's one. You're winning this week. You're winning this week. I'll get you back next week, though, man.
Yes, you will.
Definitely, yes.
And now here's another interesting thing and we talked about this before, how Manson was very close with Dennis Wilson and had a hold over him. And I do believe it's also possible, I've read about this as well, that Manson had a hand in the murder of Dennis Wilson. Now, everybody thinks that Dennis Wilson drowned in shallow water there at Marina del Rey. But Dennis Wilson was the only beach boy, the only true beach boy out of the group. He was a very good swimmer and surfer. So I find it suspect that he drowned in shallow water there without assistance. And Charles Manson remarked that he did have Dennis Wilson killed because of the atrocity that Wilson committed against him by publishing one of his songs and changing the words around. I think the song was called Cease to Exist. And so Manson may have quite possibly had a hand in authorizing Dennis Wilson to not exist anymore. So, and also Brian Wilson, who was a musical genius, there's no doubt about that. Brilliant musician and composer. It's unquestionable, one of the best. But I do believe that he was under MK Ultra mind control as well, and it created such a break that the man has been mentally damaged ever since to this day. But Brian Wilson, allowed Dennis Wilson to bring Charles Manson into his home studio with Neil Young present as well, and to record Charles Manson's songs. Now, for anybody who thinks that Charles Manson was just this little character that was like a little vermin among these great stars and had very little to no connection with them, that's a lie. He had very strong ties and connections with a lot of these upper echelon stars.
Yeah, he was very much part of the scene from what I can make out. And again, it's just my opinion from what I've seen and heard. But yeah, you couldn't fit a cigarette paper in between like the Manson crew and everyone we've been talking about today, you know?
Yeah, it's true. And Mama Cass was another one that lived. She lived very close. The way David McGowan described it was like living across the street, but it wouldn't be just, I guess, in that close a proximity. But he was describing that she lived nearby to the CeeLo Drive home where they just absolutely butchered Sharon Tate and all those people there. And Manson and his people were always over at Mama Cass's. And furthermore, they were at the CeeLo Drive residence many times before Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate moved in there, because music producer Terry Melcher, who was the son of Doris Day, lived at that residence, and he too had these parties where Manson and the gang were present. So he knew the residents, he knew the area. So again, for anybody that would think that he just happened upon the Tate residence, just said, oh, let's just try this place. Wrong. He knew that he was supposed to be there. And I believe that he had those people to be there to carry out that plan because it was contracted to do so. And the same thing the next night with the La Biancas. So maybe we'll never get to the truth on the matter to have total and full clarity in it. But I am absolutely convinced that those murders and many other murders that he wasn't convicted of were for a reason, and perhaps contractual reasons, whether it was through the Process Church or other places, who knows. But another topic that will come upon in the very near future will be the Son of Sam murders, the David Berkowitz and the gang, because David Berkowitz did not carry out those murders by himself. And again, we see the connection with Berkowitz, the Process Church, and Manson himself. So there's a connection with all these players.
And you've got in here the Wonderland murders as well.
Yeah, that was the four on the floor.
Yep.
Yeah, and these were supposed to be drug dealers that were all found brutally murdered. And so, and he says that in here as well, that truth be told, the Manson and Wonderland murders were merely spatters on Laurel Canyon's blood-drenched tapestry. In the pages of this fascinating book, McGowan chronicles tale after tale of suicide and murder while delivering readers to a web of sinister synchronicities.
You know, Bill, I've never read the book, but I'm actually going to try now and get a hold of it and actually read it myself.
Even if I have to send you a copy
getting back into
pond, I'm going to do it.
Getting back into the reading physical books these days, and I like the audio books. It might even be on audiobook, but yeah, I've spoke about it with enough people that now I really need to dive in and get this knowledge really kind of ingrained so that it's in there. We can talk about it more. But
it's fascinating, Kev. It really is.
Well, it really is, because I mean,
David McGowan his life.
Well, you know, there's a lot of rumor. Let's just say there's a lot of speculation that is what cost him his life. And let's look at it another way. If you are naming names and the connections we are making are solid, which they are, then obviously you're going to be a target for somebody, right, Bill? Yeah. I mean, there's some truth gets you in trouble. I've always said that. And, you know, me talking about the Bigfoot and things like that, it's never going to get me You know, the kind
Hmm.
of heat that some people get, and you've heard Bill, the heat he gets. You hear it on the show sometimes.
Yeah.
But then there's other toes that you step on, and sometimes you might not even know you've done it. But when you're going after the heart of the military-industrial complex,
Yes.
you're
Dangerous
naming,
stuff.
yeah, you're naming people that have been idols. Many teenagers grew up idolizing these people, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But it was a mind control operation. You were meant to idolize them because they were steering you in a direction. And when you start revealing those truths, Bill, woof, then you get the heat, right?
It's very dangerous and could be deadly.
Yeah, and maybe it was for Mr. McGowan.
Yeah, and God bless him. And I just salute him for a very solid and thorough piece of work that I think will certainly stand the test of time. And Kev, I hope that you do. And maybe I'll order you a copy and have it sent to you over there. But I think it's important that you read the book because it is just chock full of very valuable
And
information.
yeah, people are asking the name of the book. I'm going to bring it up here so you can actually see it. But it's Weird
Yeah,
Scenes.
weird
And
scenes from the canyon, and you can order it on Amazon.com.
yeah, I'll bring it up here so people can actually see it, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. It's on Amazon, so there we
Yeah.
go. And yeah, there it is there. Laurel Canyon. Well, that's not it. There it is there. There we go.
There it is. That's
Yeah.
it. I highly recommend it. I really do.
Like I was
I'm
saying
just
in
sad that the man
yeah,
is no longer here.
like I was saying in opening, Bill, and it was somebody in my Discord today as well, you know, mentioned Jay Dyer, who does a lot of great work on this topic. But without Dave McGowan, you know, I think a lot of the information that we've been going over today, I can't say it wouldn't have been put together, but he was the guy that done it originally, and
I agree.
we always give credit where it's due, and definitely this
Yes,
time it goes to Dave McGowan.
absolutely. And you know, we could, man, we're what, 2 hours and 12 minutes into this
We
now,
are.
and we could roll another 2 hours with this information. But I'll just say this, that it is worth a read, and I highly recommend it. And if you want to know truth, and if you are into connecting dots, you will not be disappointed if you read this book.
No, absolutely not. And Bill, where are we going next week then? You mentioned the son of Sam there.
We very well may be going into there next week. We'll come up with something.
Yeah, we could look at the crazy cults and
yeah,
serial
it's
killer
endless.
types, and yes, because
It's endless. So I want to do a show on that West Memphis 3 as well. That's another thing. You and I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but it is worth doing an entire show on to present. My goodness, that's another just what happened to those 3 children is just sickening, to say the
horrendous.
least.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, let me ask you then, how's the feedback been since your TV appearance on Ghost Nation?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, just tremendous feedback. Really, I think I've received more feedback on that one than any of the shows I've done in recent memory. And so a lot of people have been watching it, and they have been, from what I understand, I've only seen it once, but from what I understand, they have rebroadcast it several times since then. And I've gotten messages and phone calls and text from people saying, you know, wow, just saw you on that. It was great. You were great on there. And so again, big thank you to Jason Halls and everybody over at the Ghost Nation show. And it really was something. And the most important thing is that I received a message that the homeowner is doing very well now, has peace, no more supernatural
He
incidents
looked
taking
super
place.
stressed. He looked like somebody that was really under it when I seen him in the episode to begin with.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's the
big
best
time,
part of it.
big time.
And, you know, when I see something like that, and then it brings to mind my good friend Lydia, who was in the Holzer Files episode, that, you know, she was the victim in Missouri. And God worked through me to free her and take that from her, and I praise God for it. Love her dearly, and I'm so happy for her that she's doing well, and her family have moved forward and she's actually helping people as well. So God's working through her now to help people in these matters. So that's the
Lydia's in.
greatest thing, Kev.
Now, did you
Is
say Lydia Bell?
yes.
She's in the chat room.
See,
No, she is.
she's
Yes.
fantastic. Hi, Lydia, and I'm so glad that she's doing well and she's moved forward, and God is blessing her and flourishing her in her life. So it's the greatest thing for me, Kev, when I know that God has actually worked through me to do this for somebody. So this is what certainly keeps me going and keeps people contacting me for help. I have been so busy, still not traveling because of the garbage that's going on in Maryland, and the numbers are still rising. Um, so I won't be traveling until things get back to an acceptable number for me. I'm not worried about myself. I walk in total faith, but I would never forgive myself if I traveled somewhere and carried something back to my wife or someone else and they got it. And I would never, ever forgive myself for that. So I have just shut my travel down until I know that it is completely safe to travel. And in the meantime, I'm doing Skype sessions with my clients and phone sessions as well. So I am more busy than ever with the Skype and phone sessions. And I might as well say it now. If you are out there and you're having these supernatural problems, you feel like you're cursed or you're blocked, or there's some type of attachment on you, or anything of that nature, if you feel like you're demonically oppressed, or you know somebody that you feel is possessed, whatever the case may be, don't hesitate to reach out. I've said it a million times, and I guess I'll say it 1,000,001. I am very busy, but I'm never too busy to help somebody, and it will be my pleasure to help you. Just visit BillJBean.com. You can contact me directly from the website, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible after you send me a message. Either myself or one of my assistants will be back to you very quickly after we receive your message.
And Lydia, the best place to get me is on my email, and that's TrueTube, TRUE, tube1984 at gmail.com. So that's the best place to get in touch with me.
We'll have to have her on sometime, Kev, to talk about her story and what she went through, because she suffered greatly for a long time. And again, our glorious God makes the impossible possible. If he could do it for someone like me, he'll do it for anybody. So I'm very grateful and thankful to God for what he has done for her and for many through me.
And Bill, I'll let you say a final prayer for today. And
yeah. Wow, we sure covered a lot of bases, didn't we?
I tell you, dude, it's I'm loving this, and every week it's funny how the topics they string together. But again, it's really interesting stuff that we're going into as well. Really good topics, and I think the audience, they're really enjoying that. You know.
Fantastic, and I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in, and I want everybody just to start to relax, and we're going to end this with our final prayer and blessing and cleansing here and now. And I pray that after this takes place, your frequency and vibration will be raised on high, and you can move forward and have a great week. Father, we thank you and praise you for this blessed and appointed time. And Father, I pray for everyone out there that is watching now or listening in. And I ask that you bless and help them with whatever it is that they may be going through and whatever it is that they may be needing. We trust in you 100%, Father. And I'm asking that you send your giant warrior angels to everyone out there that is in need. And by your mighty power, Father, in your mighty and holy name, in Jesus' name, I bind and break the power over Satan and all of his demons, all of his fallen angels, all of his unclean spirits, all of his demonic powers and principalities, all of his legal rights, all of his demonic strongholds, all of his curses, hexes, vexes, spells, charms, fetishes, all witchcraft, sorcery, magic, voodoo, all death, destruction, sickness, pain, torment, incantations, chanting hoodoo root works, money and success curses, relationship curses, all ungodly soul ties, all family bloodline curses, and anything and everything that the devil has built over anyone and everyone that may be in need out there right now. By your mighty power, Father, in your mighty and holy name, in Jesus' name, I declare broken off of them. And Father, I ask that you send your power into each and every one of these individuals, and not only remove all the gunk and the junk that has been built over them and within them, but Father, I ask that you raise their frequency and vibration on high. And may you work through them to be a blessing to others and a shining example of your love, mercy, and goodness. Father, we give you the praise and the thanks and the glory for everything forevermore. In Jesus' name it is so. Glory, hallelujah.
There we go, Bill. Another week. Come
Amazing.
and gone. I'm telling you, man, it's unbelievable. It just goes so fast, and I suppose that's a sign of the times that we are in. And if you're in America right now, we're all with you. We're all rooting for you. Don't get dragged into something that we're seeing right now. And let's just hope that somehow, some way, America and the people can get through this. And I think it really will take God's help, because some of the things that we're seeing, and we're on the cusp of another night of it already. I'm already watching Twitter and things, and
Yeah.
it's horrendous. You know, we've had a truck driving through a crowd of protesters now, Bill. Not the one you showed me earlier.
Yeah.
This is
There was
another one
also
that's happened
a
as well
vehicle
now.
in New York, Kev. There was a police vehicle in New York
Yeah,
that
I've
also
seen
drove
that.
through.
Yeah, I've seen that. So listen, stay strong. I hope Bill's words and prayer there has helped you in some way, in any way. Hope God's worked through him to kind of bring you some peace of mind. And we'll be back next week. And Bill, I don't know if you're on any shows or anything this week you want to tell people about.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because yes, I have something upcoming with Cheryl Jones. She's the investigative reporter from Coast to Coast, and very much looking forward to that. And I will give more details on it. I always try to be respectful of what she may or Coast may or may not want me to say, but after the interview is complete, then next week we'll talk about it. And again, I'm very much looking forward to it. It'll be different because usually, you know, when I'm on Coast to Coast, I'm on with George Norrie. So this will be something different, but yet it'll be great, no doubt. And so we'll have a lot to talk about when that comes. And on next week's show, we'll talk more about it.
So what night's that, Bill?
Well, right now, I don't want to say anything until they're ready to. Yeah, so once they give me the okay, I'll post something and talk about it, and then on the show next week we'll talk about all of it.
And once I find out, I'll let you know via social media. Keep an eye on Coast to Coast website. I'm sure they'll be announcing the show when it's coming up as well. And I look forward to hearing you on there, Bill. And I hope you're all looking forward to hearing from us again next week, because by hook or by crook, we will be here next week. That is one thing that is guaranteed. And if you're looking for any of the previous episodes that we have done already, then all you have to do is head on over to this YouTube channel here, and I'll drop that in. There you go. That's in the chat room. And on there, you'll find all of the back episodes and a whole lot more from Bill as well. So head on over, search for Bill Bean if you can't get to the link for any reason. And his is the top channel that appears on the search there. Go to his website as well, billjbean.com. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, keep in that warrior mode, faith, strength, courage. Good night and God bless, and we'll be back same time, same place next week.